I believe I was in 6th grade when my dad had an affair, and he left us, and that was really hard growing up because the thought of not having my dad in the house and our family being shattered was really, really hard for us. Hi, my name is Stella, and this is my story. I was brought up Catholic. My whole family's Catholic. My brother wanted to be a priest growing up. I was not familiar with the Bible or Jesus or God, but I could tell you all about the saints. I could tell you all about Mary. I could tell you about the rosary. I could tell you about the traditions and the catechisms of the Catholic Church, because that's what we were taught. We were taught to fear God, not in like the good fear, but just the God is so scary. You don't want to talk to him directly. You want to talk to Mary because Jesus can't say no to Mary, and Mother Mary this, Mother Mary that. I would say I had a pretty good relationship with Mary and some of my favorite saints growing up. We did a lot of works for God's grace because that's part of the faith, I believe, doing works in order to attain God's grace, not knowing that God's grace is free and it's a gift he already gives us because he loves us. My husband at the time, he had an accident at work. He fell from 38 feet in the air, and he miraculously was able to flip himself over because he was falling head first, and he landed in the best way possible that saved his life. He landed on both feet and flew back. He broke all the toes on one foot. He shattered his other ankle, and he was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And that was a hard time for us because I was pregnant and I had just moved to Texas. I had no friends, no family near me. That was really hard. But we started going to church with Kevin, my husband's sister, and that church, and it was through that church that I discovered something new and fascinating was the Bible. And I know that sounds silly because the Catholics have their own Bible, but I never really read that. It was interesting, and it was a life-changing experience because I learned that I could have a direct relationship with Jesus. I don't have to go through Mary or the priest or the saints or anybody. I can just read about him and talk to him. I was rebaptized. When I told my family I was baptized, they were confused because they told me I was already baptized as a baby. It was a struggle for a little bit because since my whole family's Catholic, once I started reading the Bible more, there were some things that I noticed that the pastor at that church was saying kind of was different than what I believed. The coolest thing that I learned was about Sabbath. My husband's father would go to church on Sabbath, Saturday, and I thought that was really weird because everybody goes to church on Sundays. People who go to church on Saturday, like, what is that? The more I started reading the Bible, the more Sabbath is mentioned, and there's no doubt about Sabbath being the Sabbath. It's Saturday, the 7th day of the week. It's in the beginning. In Genesis, God created the earth and he rested on the 7th day. Not only did he rest, he declared it holy, he sanctified it, he blessed it. I did my own research. I think that's very important to always do your own research. Whenever somebody tells you something, seek it out, ask God to help you seek it out. And he will help you find the answers you're looking for. I did my research, I went on Catholic websites, and I found certain pages of their doctrine that talked about changing the Sabbath to Sunday and why they worship on Sunday, and they acknowledge the Sabbath is the 7th day is on Saturday, but here are the reasons why they changed it. I was born in Seoul, South Korea. My family moved to Costa Rica when I was 6 years old. We lived there for about 2 years. I attended a private Catholic school when we were living in Costa Rica, and we learned English and Spanish. And then we moved to the States when I was about 8 years old, and I grew up in Georgia. I have a brother who's 2 years older than I am. We're very close, and he's a devout Catholic. He wanted to be a priest growing up. There was a lot of tension once I told them I wasn't Catholic anymore. My mom, I remember her saying something like, "Oh no, what did I do wrong? Like, well, why did you choose this other path?" What was sad, I would say, is whenever I would try to ask them questions like, "Hey, why do you believe this or that?" Because in the Bible it says this, like in the Bible it says we don't need to work for grace. Grace is a free gift given to all. We don't have to do all these works like the Catholic Church says. And they would get very angry. I didn't understand why they would get angry, but looking back, I think they were angry because they didn't know themselves, because it was just a tradition. They didn't know why they believed what they believed. In my early 20s, when I left Catholicism, when my husband had his accident and we started going to his sister's church. I've never been to a non-Catholic church before, so seeing their worship and just hearing their pastor talk was a new experience instead of seeing all the elaborate. So I met my husband, Kevin, when I was in my 20s, and he was originally from Texas, but he was living with his brother at the time in Georgia. I ended up moving back to Texas with him, which was crazy because my mom had actually bought a house in Texas, and she was planning on moving to Texas even before I even met my husband. Kevin was a Christian at the time. I remember when he was telling my mom, "I love your daughter and plan on getting married and stuff," and my mom just looked at him and said, "Well, Stella is Catholic, we are Catholic, and so we want you to raise the family Catholic." And he was so bold, because my mom is scary. She is intimidating. She's like a tiger mom. And for him to be bold and to step up, I remember him looking at her straight in the eye and telling her, "I am a Christian. I love Jesus with all my heart. I've been baptized. I've been saved. I will not be Catholic. If Stella chooses to go to a Catholic church, I will go with her, but I will not change and be Catholic just because you asked me to be Catholic." I believe I was in 6th grade when my dad had an affair, and he left us, and that was really hard growing up, because the thought of not having my dad in the house and our family being shattered was really, really hard for us. I saw my mom go through a really dark time where she was suicidal at times in front of us because she was just not stable. That was really hard on my brother, who's 2 years older than me. He had to step up and be the man of the house. There's childhood trauma that I remember very vividly growing up. And it's something that happened to me as a child that shouldn't happen to kids. Being assaulted when you're a child, you remember that. And I think ever since then, I've gone to therapy and learned that when somebody does things to you that shouldn't be done to you as a child, that it strips you away of self-worth. I think I just grew up insecure, and that's why I don't like attention. I like to stay in the shadows. I like to stay in the back because I'm more comfortable that way. Maybe it will help others who have gone through the similar thing, that it's not your fault. You should not be ashamed, and you're strong, and you have Jesus, and he can help you overcome anything. I love the story of Cyrus mentioned in Isaiah 45. I love that God calls him by name. I just find that fascinating. And he tells him, like, I'm raising you up. This is what I'm gonna do, and this is for my people's sake. And I guess it's special to me because I'm here, I'm alive. He calls me by name. He calls all of us by name. If you don't know your purpose, the fact that you're alive and you are here on earth, God created you, and he has big plans for you. You just gotta seek him and have that personal relationship to figure out what your purpose is. This is really out of my comfort zone. really out of my comfort zone. Being in front of camera was terrifying. I had anxiety for a long time. And then I started praying about it, and my friend actually brought up in Luke, Jesus tells a parable, I believe in Luke 19, about the minas, about how Jesus gave everybody the same amount. And I realized if I am not willing to share my story, I'm gonna be like that servant who hid my story, my testimony, and have nothing to tell Jesus, like, this is what I did. I mean, I wanna make him proud. Why am I so embarrassed or shy or insecure to share this good news? If I'm doing all this reading and I say I'm a Christian and I carry my Bible everywhere and I'm excited to share anything new I've read, I really started thinking that if I can't even do this in front of a camera to share his good news, what makes me think that I'm gonna be ready for when there's trials and tribulation, when there's gonna be life or death? Like, am I gonna be bold to speak in his name? Matthew 7:22 and 23, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. How important it is to have a direct personal relationship of knowing him versus knowing about him. You can just seek God with a sincere and open heart and ask him questions and ask him to help you find the answers, and he's ready to do that. He wants to have that personal relationship with you. He's knocking on the door, but you gotta let him in.